Kadosh Boker Tov Masechet Ketubot Daf He Amud Aleph 55 Sankon Sak, yeah, which is Hamsa, double Hamsa for you guys. Okay, so here it says we're talking about over here, right? Many different halachot to do with the concept of Ketubah and Tosefet Ketubah. So if you remember, there were 14, right, differences, right, or nafkaminot, practical differences, ramifications of whether Tosefet Ketubah is considered like the Ketubah or not. Remember, the Ketubah is the Ketubah in itself. Tosefet is the extra. So we started saying that what happens if she sold her Ketubah? She sold her Ketubah, it's considered that she sold the Tosefet as well. If she was Mochelet, if she forgave her Ketubah, consider that she forgave her Ketubah as well. Moredet, if she comes and she goes against her husband and she's not giving him relations, say Malacha. Pogemet, right? What is Pogemet? She comes and she says that she receives part of it. Tova'at, she comes and she starts asking for a Ketubah and Bedin. So the same thing is the same halacha if she asks for the tosefet of the ketubah. Next one, overet al dat. What is overet al dat? Overet al dat, she's going against the dat, meaning she's not covering her hair or not doing certain things. This is where we're starting today on Daf He Amud Aleph. What does that mean? Right, that means that on Daf He Amud Aleph, right, he comes and he says as follows, right? He says shevach. What does it mean, shevach? A woman is not going to receive, right? She's not going to take the shevach, meaning the appreciation after the husband passes away. What does that mean that after her husband passes away? Which means that she does not take the tosefet as well, meaning anything which appreciates in value, right? She does not get. Okay? There's the Gemara. Gemara now says shivua. What does it mean shivua? We're talking about now in a case where a woman has to swear in order to get her ketubah. She also has to swear to get the Tosefet Ketubah. Remember, everything that we're talking about here is the Tosefet Ketubah, the Bidyu Ketubah Kemo Ketubah. Right? It's the exact same thing as the Ketubah. Okay? Next, Shevit. What does it mean, Shevit? Shenat Shevita, we know that there's a concept of Shevit Mishametet. That's what we have to do a Pruz Bol. Right at the beginning. Right? Nunhei. Yeah? We're going to do this here right before Rosh Hashanah. So it says over here, we have to do what's called a pruzbul in order that it should not annul all the things. So the same thing, it's not mishameted the tosefet, which means that by the ketubah, it never cancels. Because if not, imagine a person could come and he says, listen, he got divorced from his wife after 7 years, right? Shavit mishametet. That's it. Shavit canceled out his ketubah. So now he says, listen, it's after 7 years. Gamarnu. Yeah? So what happens? He comes and he says, it's not mishametet. Number 10, ulkotev kol nechasav lebanav. If a person comes and he writes all his properties to his children, and he says, and he writes to his wife a piece of land, right? So she lost her ketubah. She cannot collect from anything else other than that piece of land. The same thing will apply to the tosefet. Yud Aleph, number 11, ligbot min karka. Just like a woman cannot collect from the ketubah only from the karka, so too if she's going to come and she's going to get divorced, she cannot collect it from metaltali, movable objects. So too the tosefet can only be from the karka. Next, mina ziborit. What does it mean, mina ziborit? We know that the woman only collects from the worst of the properties. Right? There's idit, benonit, and ziborit. Idit is the highest form of karka, meaning you're going to get a piece of land in the village of El Harbor. Yeah? If you're talking about now Benonit, so maybe it'll be in Miami Beach. You understand? Ziborit, maybe it'll be Opaloka, Hialeah, North Miami Beach, some over there. So that's called Idit, Benonit, and Ziborit. Yeah? Right? Bechol Zman Shehi Bevetavia. Yeah? He says over here, as long as, right? Number 13, as long as she's living in the father's house. So it says like this. He says, imagine right now she's living in the father's house 25 years after the husband passed away, and the Yitomim cannot come and they cannot serve. They cannot give her parnasah, and she never asked for the ketubah. So what happens? So therefore therefore it's going to be muchach that she already was mochelet on ketubata. So if she's mochelet on ketubata, she's mochelet also on the tosefet as well, on the extra as well. The last one, which is ketubah bedin dichrin. If you remember, we already said that the males, they inherit her ikak ketubata and the nedunya of the mother. Right? So, for example, there were 2 wives. So those children of that wife, they inherit their mother's nedunya, the dowry, and the ketubah. So he says over here, so too they're going to also inherit the tosefet to the father, which is the extra that the father gave to them. So if the father went and he gave to the mother let's say to this woman, he gave her an extra $26,000. So that Tosefet also goes to her children. I mean, it's just like her Ikar Ketubah goes to her children and not to the other children, even though they're his children, right? Because he had two wives, right? They're all his children. No, but it goes specifically to her children. So to the Tosefet, the same thing. Okay? And now we're going to come and bring down 4 machlokot between the yeshivot of Pumbedita and Mata Mechasya. Remember that there were many different yeshivot and there were different machlokot. Sometimes you had, right, certain opinions going one way, the other way. So therefore, it was very important, right? Remember, when we learn Torah, that's what brings up the stuff. You understand? If we don't learn, then it starts going down. Yeah? Fine. So Itmar, it was stated, Ketubat Benin Dichrin. When we're talking about Ketubat Benin Dichrin, Pumbedita Amre. Pumbedita come and they say, Lo tarfe mi meshabde. Right? What does that mean? They cannot come and they cannot take from properties which are mishubadim, lien properties, properties that have a lien on it. They cannot take from it. Why? Because we already learned in the Mishnah above and Mubet that if somebody is talking about the Ketubat Benin Dichrin, Yertum Tnan, it's written that it's like a Yerusha. So therefore, right, because it says Benin Dichrin devu lechi minai inun yertun, they're going to inherit. So therefore, since it's considered like an inheritance, so it's just like the inheritance, also the same thing, they cannot take from properties which have a lien on it. Benemata mechasya come and they say, they can take from a lien. Why? Because they have the girsa, they're going to take. If you learn that it's an inheritance, you cannot take it from a property which has a lien on it. Right? For example, you have a mortgage on a property. So it's not really your property. The bank really owns the property. In a sense, if something happens, the bank, if there's extra money, so fine. But if not, the bank owns that property. It's not really yours, right? Here he comes and he says, but if you learn that the girsa, that the text is not supposed to be written in yirtun, which is a yerusha, but rather yisvun, they're going to take. So therefore, it's completely different. So therefore, they could take from the chasim mishubadim. The hilchata, what is the halacha though between the machloket between bnei mata mechasya and pumbedita? Lo tarfami meshabde. They cannot take from mishubadim. Why? Because they had the girsa of Yerusha. Okay, fine. Next, mitaltale vitnihu be'enayhu. What happens now if he designated mitaltalim, movable objects, right? And they're all here. Okay, so she's able to come and collect from it without a shavua. Letnehu be'enayhu. But what happens if it's not here anymore? So Pumbedita Amne, Pumbedita come and say she could collect from other fields without a shivua, from other properties without a shivua. Bishua. Matamechasi come and say no, she has to do it with a shivua. Why? Because we're going to suspect, right, that we're going to come and suspect that he did designate for her another type of metaltalim for the ketubah. What is halacha? Here it's like Pumbedita, right? So that means this is the second case again. Yeah, below shivua. That means this is the second case that we paskin like Pumbedita and not like Bnei Mata Mechasya. Yeah, okay, but this is the second one, and the second one that we also paskin like Pumbedita. Number 3, Yichela Ar'ah. What happens if the husband came and he designated a piece of land for her ketubah? Be'arba'a mitzrana, right? And he actually went and he put down the 4 different directions of where it is exactly. Right? That means, any type of a property, you have to have directions. Meaning, okay, how many
coordinates, the geographic
right, exactly, the geographic coordinates to know exactly where until where. Right? The same thing. If you buy a piece of property, right, what happens? You come and you get the title, I forgot how it's called, there's a certain word for it. You come and you get the survey, thank you. The survey, you come and you see this amount, this is exactly the directions, this is exactly where it is, every single thing, everything is written there. Why? Because you have to know exactly where the property that you bought. So here it says here, the husband came, he designated a piece of field, right, a piece of land, and he actually wrote down the 4 different, right, directions of exactly where it is. So it says over here, he could collect from it below shivua, without a shivua. Okay? Bechad mitzra, right? But what happens if he only wrote down one of the directions? Meaning he only says it stops, the buck stops here. But he didn't say where it stopped there, here. He only mentioned one of the different directions. So therefore, Pumbedita says she could collect from it without a shivua. And the Matamachas says with a shivua. The halacha is like Pumbedita again, without a shivua, right? The 4th machloket. Amar le'edin, if a person comes and he tells witnesses, kitvu v'chitmu v'havule. Right? Come, write a document, right? Sign it and give it to him as a present, right? Which means, right, that he's going to give. So Ronen comes, he's going to give me a present. He's got a lot of properties. So he comes and he says, right, to Mordechai, right? He comes and says here, write it down, sign, and give it to him. So they do everything. They write, they sign, they give it to me. Baruch Hashem.
That's your
Kanu mineh. It's mine. I acquired it. Why? Because they wrote it, they signed it, they did everything. Yeah, okay, perfect. So now what happens? They don't have to come and start asking him, right? Does he still want to give it to him? Because if he actually went and he's told them, right? So, so that means it's already that he gave it to them. He told them, write it, sign it. Come on, that's it. He's giving it over. No problem. What happens if the Edim did not do a kinyan suda? Meaning he just went and he told them, write it and sign it, but there was no acquisition done. There was no form of a kinyan done between the Edim and Ronen. So Pumbedita says, Lo tzarich imluch, you don't have to actually even ask him, right? You could give it over. And Mata says, you do have to ask him. But here the halacha is like Mata Mechasya, not like Pumbedita. Here the halacha is like Mata Mechasya, the what? You have to ask him before doing the shtar. Are you sure you still want to give it? And why? It could be that all of a sudden he's got a yitzhara. He doesn't want to give it over. At the beginning, he's big talk. He wants to get. Afterwards, all of a sudden, he's afraid. In a sense.
Once he's it's already
Okay, so therefore you have to actually ask. Okay, next. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, 2 dots. Everyone has 2 dots. 2 dots on Nunhei Amud Aleph. Towards the bottom. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says, right? If it's from the Nisuim, if a woman is from the marriage, she gets everything. But if it's only going to be from the Irusin, she does not take the Tosefet, the Ketubah. She only takes 200 zuz for a Betula, 100 zuz for an Al Mana or for a non-Betula. Okay? Why? Because the entire Tosefet was only given in order to get married to her. He's not going to give her extra money if he's never actually going to get married to her. You said only if he's actually married to her, then he gave her the extra money. So Itma, it was stated, Rav Rabbi Natan. Rav Rabbi Natan. Chadama, one of them says which means that only from the Nisuim she gets everything. Chadman, and one of them comes and he says, but rather even from the Rusin, she also collects everything. So Tistayem, we want to bring a proof to Rabbi Natan that it's Rabbi Natan that he says the Shamina Rabbi Natan, as we learned from Rabbi Natan, the Azil Batar Umdana. According to Shtat Rabbi Natan, we go after Umdana. What does that mean? We go after what the person has in his mind. Meaning we come and we say, listen, what really was going through his mind? What really was going through his mind is he only wanted to give it to her if he's actually going to be married to her. If he's going to divorce her right before marriage, he's not going to come and start giving people things for free. It doesn't make sense. The halacha is going to be like Rabbi Shimon Shazuri and a Mesukan, which means like this. If a person's sick and he tells witnesses, write a get to his wife, but he doesn't say to give it to her. He just says, write it. Write a get. He doesn't say to give it to her, just to write it, prepare it, right? So what happens? They write it and they give it. Why? Because we say that when he went and he said to the witnesses, write the get, he meant to write it and to give it. Not just stop writing it and to leave it on the wall, right? And just to wait. Obviously, he meant to write it and to give it. So therefore, this is called umdana. Umdana means we're going to evaluate, we're going to assess that this is what he had in mind when he said these words. So since this is a minatan, so this is a minatan that he says that obviously we go like we're assessing that if he wanted to give her extra cash, it was only after real marriage, not just after engagement. Okay? Uvitrumat maaser shel demai. And just like trumat maaser of demai. What does that mean? If a person comes and he purchases fruits from a ma'aretz, remember that's called demai. Fruits from a ma'aretz, we have a doubt whether he took off ma'asrot, trumot ma'asrot, or not. Okay, so therefore, in such a case, right, it gets mixed up with trumat maaser. Now remember, trumat maaser only goes to the Kohen, right? Maaser goes to the Levi, trumat maaser goes to the Kohanim. So now what happens is if Shimon Shazuri comes and he says he could ask the ma'aretz to sell him the fruits, to separate maaser before selling it to him, and then he's going to rely upon his words. Therefore, you're allowed to buy it without any problem. Okay, and then there's not going to be a problem of truma or whatever it is that's going to go on this. Okay, the Rav lo azil batarun dina. So says the Gemara 1 second. We had 2 different opinions. We had Rabbi Natan, right, and we had Rav. You're going to tell me, right, that Rav doesn't go after Umdana. It's only Rabbi Natan. Rabbi Natan is the only one that goes after Umdana, and not after Rabbi Natan. So he comes and he says like this. He says, "V'Rav lo azibat Umdana." He says, "V'Yitmar," it was stated, "Matanat shchiv merah shekatuv ba kinyan." What happens if you have a matanat shchiv merah? That it's written over there a kinyan, right? That there's going to be a kinyan, a form of acquisition done. Remember, shchiv merah is a person. He's on his deathbed. Yeah, he's going to pass away. So, lo aleinu barminan, right? After 120. Yeah. So, therefore, what happens is he all of a sudden wants to give out presents. Yeah. So, he comes and he wants to see who was by his bedside, who was nice to him at the end. Yeah. He got his hearing aid fixed, so he's able to hear everything what they're saying about him. You understand? So, now he wants to come. He wants to give out, right? Matanat shchiv merah. So, he says here, if it's written a kinyan, bevei Rav mishmeh de Rav amru. In the Academy of Rav, they said in the name of Rav, Arkeve atre richshe. The shchiv merah comes and they put him on top of two horses, which means the kavanat of the shchiv merah was to give the matana mitzad shne kochot, the koach of matanat shchiv merah and the koach of matanat bari, which means this: when a person's healthy, how does he give the present? With a kinyan, right? He's going to give me, let's say, the phone, right? So he gave me the phone. I pick up the phone, I make a kinyan, and now it's mine. Right? Everybody saw, there were two witnesses, they all agree, he agreed, keep it quiet. So this is now mine. Yeah? Okay, very nice. So now what happens is that's mitzad matana bari. What is matana shchiv merah? Matana shchiv merah is that just the fact that he says it. Why? He's sick in bed. He doesn't need anything anymore. But the fact that he brought down both, so he wanted to give him mitzad shne kochot. He wanted to give him mitzad the koach ava shchiv merah and mitzad the koach ava bari. That's why it's also written the form of acquisition as well. That is the shita of Rav. Shmuel says, Lo yadana ma'idun be. He says, I don't understand what you're talking about, right? How are we going to judge in this present? Why? It could be that the kinyan that he did was mevatel the matana, which means even though he had the kavanah to give the present, the fact that he wrote on an acquisition, it's not a present anymore. It's a form of acquisition. And if it wasn't done, it wasn't done. So, Bevei Rav Nishmed Rav Amri, right? So now they're going to explain the machloka between Rav and Shmuel. So in the Academy of Rav, they said in the name of Rav, Arkevea Trerikshe. What does it mean that he's going on two different horses? Harei kematana bari. It's like a matana bari. Harei kematana shchimena. It's like matana shchimena. Harei kemat. It's like a bari. Di mamad enu yachol lachzor. A shchimena comes and he gives out all his property. And after a week, he gets up and he's 100% healthy. Everything gets back to him. Why? Because when he gave the presents, it was on the knowledge that he was going to die. But if all of a sudden he gets up, and now he's able to walk, and he's going to live another 5 years, why in the world is he going to stay penniless? Everything comes back to him. Everything goes back. No. That's matanat shchiv merah. That's the concept of matanat shchiv merah. However, though, what if the person's healthy? The person's healthy, and he gave me the presents. So it doesn't retract. You can't retract. It's matanat bari. Matanat bari, you gave the present, finish, finito. That's it. Yeah, that's it. Everything was given. Yeah, there's nothing else to talk about. Yeah, fine. So now what happens? He comes and he says, right? He says, "Arei kimatanat shchiv merah," right? "Arei kimatanat bari." That if he became healthy, he cannot retract. "Arei kimatanat shchiv merah." So why is it like kimatanat shchiv merah? Shimamar helvati leploni, halvato leploni. If he's going to come and he says, I'm going to be makne to ploni, a halva'a, right, that they're obligating to me. So therefore it's a good halva'a, which means that even though now you cannot do a kna'ah without a kinyan sudar, here it's like matana shchiv merah, which means like this. Usually, right, you need a kinyan to be chal. Kinyan means that you need a type of an acquisition for it to take place. Here though, it's like a matanat shchiv merah that you don't need kinyan. So if he comes and he says, listen, right, Ronen owes me $1 million, he gives it over to Ronen. Yeah, he just give it over to him. So for what happens, he acquires it, even though there's no kinyan. Why? It's like a matanat shchiv merah as well. Okay? Shmuel Amar. Now Shmuel says, Lo yadana ma'idun be. I don't know what to judge by it. Why? Shema lo gamal le'aknoto ela bishtar. Maybe his mind was only to acquire it to him with a document. Right? Ve'en shtar la'achar mitah. Now, there's no such thing as a document after death. After death, you can't use the document as a form of acquisition. You could use a document as a will, But that's not a document of acquisition. The will is just telling you what was the Yerusha rights, but it's not an acquisition. So therefore, he comes and he says, right, ve'en shtala charmita. Okay, so there's no shtala charmita.
It's like a get, a charmita.